23 years in running, the premier Halloween event, Halloween Horror Nights, would return to Universal Orlando Resort in the year of 2013. Coming off last year's IP-driven event, guests would again get to journey into some of the most horrifying names in horror alongside some new original nightmares. Dare to enter Universal Studios Florida? Just know, evil has taken root. This is SP History. When developing the 23rd Halloween Horror Nights event, the creative will continue to use their new marketing strategy of acquiring the most popular horror intellectual properties to become their headline haunted houses, but also incorporate some original concepts to delight hardcore fans. Universal would begin to tease the event in early summer of that year, touting what evil has taken root, previewing all new horror would be coming to Universal Studios Florida. Due to its continued massive popularity in 2013, Universal would again partner with television network AMC to bring back a haunted house themed towards the zombie horror TV series The Walking Dead, but it would also have a bigger part in another aspect of the Halloween event. Alongside The Walking Dead, even more horror IPs would be featured in haunted house form, such as Capcom's horror video game franchise Resident Evil and 2013's Evil Dead film. So with all that mentioned, Halloween Horror Nights 23 would run for 27 nights from between September to November, 3 more nights than last year, and feature 8 haunted houses, which is 1 more than previous, another park-wide scare zone, and 2 shows, as guests enter a twisted Universal Studios Florida where evil is rooted throughout. When exploring the 8 houses at this year's event, it would be filled with many IP-based houses, but include a few new original concepts and sequels. The first house would be located within Soundstage 21, a new location, and be based off the 2012 comedy horror film The Cabin in the Woods, as the house would share the same title. Inside, guests enter a live recreation of the film, as they enter the many blood-filled scenes from the modern cult classic, such as the cabin itself and the laboratory below that store the many horrific monsters a part of the facility. Some neat Easter eggs can be seen within the elevator scene from the house, as infamous Horror Nights icons Jack the Clown and the Caretaker can be seen within the elevators above. The second house of the event would also be placed within Soundstage 21, being based off the famous horror video game franchise Resident Evil, as it would be officially titled Resident Evil: Escape from Raccoon City. Focusing on Resident Evil 2 and 3 games, guests are transported to Raccoon City, where the evil Umbrella Corporation has unleashed their most sinister experiments, such as liquors and Nemesis himself upon everyone, as guests must find their way out before everything is sent back to hell. The next house would be located inside Soundstage 22 and be another IP house, as it was based off the 1981 John Landis horror classic An American Werewolf in London, sharing the same name. The house will take guests right into the events of the film as you come face to face with the ferocious werewolf as he wreaks havoc throughout London. This house would be touted as one of the best Horror Nights houses ever, as it not only had perfect recreations of sets from the film, its excellent utilization of puppets created a terrifying encounter with the werewolf. An American Werewolf in London would win House of the Year for 2013, and it would be not the last time we see this property at Halloween Horror Nights. The fourth house would be located within Soundstage 24, another new location, as it would be based off the 2013 horror remake Evil Dead, with the house having the same title. Inside, guests entered the many horrific scenes from the film as deadites try to possess their souls inside the demented cabin. This also would not be the end of this IP at the event, as it would be featured again in a later year. The following house would be placed within the disaster queue and be a sequel to the 2010 House of the Year winner, as this one would be titled Havoc Derailed. Within, Guests enter on a speeding military train convoy, where the dogs of war are on board and on bent on destruction as they have their sights set and derailing everything. The house would have a before and after crash motif, as in the beginning, guests are on board the moving train, while the prisoners are locked away, but towards the end, the killer super soldiers would be successful in derailing the train, causing total havoc upon the train crew and guests. Also, in the storyline of the house, the train would derail within Cary, Ohio, the infamous Horror Nights location. The sixth house of the event will be within Sprung Tent 2 and be an all-new original house featuring a 3D element, as it would be called Afterlife: Death's Vengeance. Within the house's storyline, guests witness the execution of deadly serial killer Bobby the Blade Galetta as he meets old Sparky, which will send him into the depths of hell, as guests walk through his eternal life of pain and suffering where his victims have come back for vengeance. The next house would be located inside Sprung Tent 1 and be an original concept based off a Latin urban legend, as it would be officially titled Urban Legends La Llorona. Taking elements from previous houses at the Halloween Horror Nights Hollywood event, guests come face to face with the Weeping Woman as she haunts them throughout and seeks to condemn guests to an eternity of suffering. The final house of the event will be placed within the Parade Warehouse building and be the second iteration of a house based off the TV series AMC's The Walking Dead, as this one will be officially named The Walking Dead: No Safe Haven. This year's house would take guests into the most popular scenes of Season 3, such as Woodbury and the prison, as walkers are infested throughout. This completes the house lineup for Halloween Horror Nights 23, unleashing some of the most terrifying nightmares to ever be encountered. For the scare zones of 2013's Halloween Horror Nights event, they would return to the concept of street experiences, which entailed having a park-wide scare zone that consisted of one overall theme. Last year, we saw the Legions of Horror take over, as different roaming hordes of monsters and maniacs wreaked terror upon the streets. But for this year, the streets would be all themed towards the event's headline IP, AMC's The Walking Dead, as not only having its own house, the streets would feature iconic locations from Season 1 and 3, and be labeled as The Walking Dead: The Undead Streets. Throughout the park, walkers would be roaming all about, as guests would be thrusted right into the post-apocalyptic world of the popular television series. Like mentioned, different sections of the park would feature many well-known locations that were seen within the released 3 seasons. The first section would be located in the New York area and be labeled as the Fall of Atlanta, where guests enter the streets of the once iconic city, now destroyed and infested with flesh-eating monsters. The second section would be within the Central Park area and be labeled as the Woodlands, where walkers are lurking in the shadows, hunting for their next victim. Another section would be close by in Woody Woodpecker's Kid Zone and be labeled as Survivor's Camp, a once conceived safe space now overtaken by the deadly walkers. This would be the last time this location was used for a scare zone. The fourth section would be held near Mel's Drive-In and be referred as the Farm, where guests could walk into the burning wood structure where the smell of flesh overtakes the surroundings, appetizing the walkers around. The last section of the Undead Streets would be within the Hollywood area and be labeled as Clear, a spike-filled street where not even walkers can escape, leaving guests in an ever-ending walk of hell. The Walking Dead: The Undead Streets was another interesting concept of involving a park-wide scare zone, having guests fully entrenched in the world of the massively popular television series. However, this would be the last time a park-wide scare zone would be utilized at Halloween Horror Nights. But like every event before, it would have its fair share of entertainment offerings to view on every night, and this year would see the return of some fan-favorite shows. The first show would be held within the Beetlejuice Graveyard Review stage and be the return of a popular offering, the Rocky Horror Picture Show: A Tribute. After being gone for 4 years, the offering returns with its same elements as it reenacts popular scenes and performs many musical acts from the cult classic film. The second and final show would be held inside the Fear Factor live stage and be the once again Bill and Ted's Excellent Halloween Adventure. In this year's show, the Wild Stallions find themselves in Camp Morningwood, where many pop culture characters and celebrities of 2013 are hanging out. But when Ted's new girlfriend Taylor Swift finds the Book of the Dead and gets possessed, their time-traveling booth is stolen, and they must battle evil to get their prized possession back, all while hysterics and hijinks ensue. Other characters to be featured in the show would be the Big Bang Theory cast, Django from Django Unchained, and Miley Cyrus. This was the complete experience of the 23rd Halloween Horror Nights event, providing an all-encompassing street experience and staple Horror Nights entertainment. Halloween Horror Nights 23 would be another successful run of the event, becoming ever more ingrained with creating some of the most elaborate haunted houses and experiences based off popular horror IPs. But with evil rooted out of Universal Studios Florida, the Halloween season would fade away, but planned to come back the following season as fear would begin to grow hungry.